what I've found in talking to my friends at the label, in terms of talking to my friends who do management, any of these things, the bands that get their attention are the ones that not only play live, but can set themselves up so that when they are visible, when the shows have gotten to the point where they're getting attention and the labels are interested and the management is interested, just based on the sheer volume of shows that you do, it's ironic, but an unfortunate truth that the labels become interested once you don't need a label anymore. And the management becomes interested once you don't need management anymore. It's a really strange sort of thing.
Welcome to the Music Business Facts Podcast, where successful music industry experts share their industry secrets that will help you take your music career to the next level.
G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Rodney Holder here of musicbusinessfacts.com, and thanks so much for joining me. Today I have a very special episode for you. I have a replay of a one-on-one coaching call that was conducted by a very successful musician and music producer. Some of you may or may not know that recently I've been working with a Canadian prog metal demigod named Mr. Devin Townsend, who, in my humble opinion, is an incredible singer, songwriter, guitarist, vocalist, performer, and producer. The man's got the Midas touch at pretty much everything he does. If you haven't heard of Devin, I do strongly encourage you to go and check him out and check out his stuff because it's really good. And I'm really being honest when I say he's a super genuine, down-to-earth guy. He's extremely talented and he's also very, very successful. So I've been really enough to be working with Devin on his online course called the Devin Townsend Creative Academy. And if you're interested in having a bo peep at that course, you can check out dtcreativeacademy.com. That's dtcreativeacademy.com. Anyhow, in Dev's online course, he's teaching his students all about his tips and tricks and everything he's been learning and doing over basically the last 30-odd years. So his singing techniques, his voice, his vocal lessons, his guitar playing strategies and techniques, performing, touring, songwriting, record producing, recording instruments. Like I said, it's really a no-holes-barred look into the entire gamut of what Dev does, and he's really left no stone unturned. And as a part of Devin's course, what he also does is he gives students some of the stems to his own songs, which is pretty cool. So if you're a fan of the band, you get to deconstruct Dev's music. And if you're a fan of becoming a producer or you want to become a producer, it's a great insight to how a professional track's put together as well. So Dev not only teaches them, how to sort of mix the track, but he also shows and goes through the music and discusses why he made particular production decisions and how he got different sounds and did all that. Anyhow, one of the things that Devin did recently was he decided to run a competition for his students, and he said, I'm going to give you a track. It was a Devin Townsend track called Disruptor, and he wanted his students to remix it. And basically, a couple of the students who remixed it in a way that Devin really liked won a competition, which was a one-on-one coaching call with the man himself. So Devin has been very, very kind to allow me to have a world exclusive to play one of those calls, to replay one of those calls to you, a coaching call to a Finnish student named Viljami, and thanks also to Viljami for allowing us to replay this conversation. And Viljami's basically asking Devin about, I'm in a band. He's also a very talented young guy. What do I do? Where am I supposed to go? So it's a very interesting conversation with Devin and Viljami as Devin's sort of talking about his journey, his experiences, his thoughts on what he should be doing within the industry. And I think you'll really like it. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here's the amazing Devin Townsend giving us his intimate thoughts and opinions on how to succeed in the music business.
How's it going?
Good. Where are you calling from, man?
Finland.
That would make sense because that is not a typical North American name by any stretch.
It's the Finnish equivalent of William.
Now it makes sense. Now it's much cooler than William, though.
Thank you.
How's it going, man? How has your day been?
It's been interesting. I'll admit I was a little nervous for this, but I'm really glad to be here, and thanks for doing this.
Well, thank you for the remix and for paying attention to it. I leave to start the recording today, so it's trying to catch up on all my obligations in one period has been interesting, and I think I am almost there. So I think that our session here couldn't come at a better time. Where do you think we should start? Is there any? I was thinking about it prior, and maybe if you have any questions, or if there's anything in particular that you would like me to talk about or comment on, I think that's as good a place as any.
Did you get a chance to read my email and look at the song?
I got a chance to look at the song, but I didn't get a chance to read the email. Shall we? Can you paraphrase the email in a way that maybe we could start there?
If I just take my browser open, just a sec.
For sure, man. Thank you.
All right. First of all, thank you for doing this. Yada, 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 like I already said. So a little bit of backstory. I'm a Finnish singer guitarist with a band and a dream. And the dream is to one day grow the band into the level where we can tour and at least to some extent do it full time. And but in the same breath, I'd like to say that every day is in its own a reward, because I really love doing this, and I feel compelled to. It's something I feel like I need to do.
Very much.
And actually, I have to thank you for that, in the sense that the first module really helped me, because it made me think about why I do this. What are my core motivations? So to me, self-actualization is sure a part of it, but to me, it seems that, at least as far as I got to peeling the onion, it feels like I feel the need to express myself musically, and that seems to be the most important one to me.
That's actually a very astute observation on your part, if I may say, because perhaps underneath the surface of what I do, perhaps that's what it is fundamentally as well. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
28.
Yeah. And what's the name of your band?
Joviac. Joviac.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second, but I just had a little bit more on the email, if you don't mind.
Of course.
So the band is called Joviac. I founded it in late 2016, so it's still quite fresh. I was studying music production at the time, and Joviac's debut album was also the project part of my bachelor's thesis, which had to do with modeling software and hardware, and that's why I did the whole album by myself with machine drums, excluding playing bass. We already had our bass player back then. The album came out in May 2017, and then I went on to find the rest of the band members, and I got really lucky, because I know from experience that it's not a given to have guys that you're not only great friends with, but are really fun to work with and are brilliant musicians in their own right. So after that, we last May we released our first work as a collective, as a full band, and that's the song that I sent to you, or linked to you. And we're still in the pub circuit, but we put on a good show, even at bigger venues. And right now I'm busy writing our next album, and I guess the subject of my choice for this coaching session would have been that in no smaller question, that how to go about achieving that goal of, getting to that point of being a touring band, or growing it to the point where we would be able to, at least to some extent, do it full time. So any advice, any thoughts, any help that you can spare is greatly appreciated.
Well, I appreciate it, and thanks for being concise with your mail as well. That makes it easier for this. I mean, there's a number of things that come into my head first off, and I think one thing to state before I give any advice of any sort is that the current state of the industry is a difficult one for me to give any unequivocal information on, because it has changed so much since when I started. And in no small part did luck play into my ability to do this. And I get asked a fair amount a similar question, like, well, what can we do so we can sustain this financially and we can find ourselves in a situation where we're doing it as our main employment? And the thing that keeps coming back is making yourself visible. And it's a hard line to walk as well, because there's some people that relentlessly besiege artists such as myself or people that they think can help them with, like, they sort of spam them with their information, like, this is our bio, this is our music, you should listen to it, blah, 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 blah. And speaking for myself, that I tend to never participate in those sorts of requests. In fact, that sort of enthusiasm tends to shut me down personally, just because I have so much going on that I almost resent it when people spam me with their information. However, in a similar way, you have to be willing to make yourself visible in all sorts of ways. And so that's why I say it's a fine line. And what I found in talking to my friends at the label, in terms of talking to my friends who do management, any of these things, the bands that get their attention are the ones that not only play live, but can set themselves up so that when they are visible, when the shows have gotten to the point where they're getting attention and the labels are interested and the management is interested, just based on the sheer volume of shows that you do, it's ironic, but an unfortunate truth, that the labels become interested once you don't need a label anymore. And the management becomes interested once you don't need management anymore. It's a really strange thing. It's like in the 90s, in the 80s, all it would take, in a sense, was you to weed through your information through the thousands of demos that these people get, and the music was the thing that got it. But now I find the label are looking for bands that have got a van and they've played shows and they've got a marketing objective. They've got their own T-shirt manufacturing. They've got a Facebook presence. They've got a social media presence. They've got a logo. They've got the band dynamics to the point where they don't need to be micromanaged. And so it's an unfortunate sort of duality where you have to not only do it all yourself in order to get these people involved, but there's also no real way to do it yourself other than just social media and playing shows. So I wish there was a more romantic answer that I could give, like, well, if you follow this step and this step and this step, then that will entice this type of person and that will lead to that and the other thing. It's actually not that. It's you have to do it yourself to the point where you're doing it yourself. And at that point, labels will become interested. So I think you're on the right path in a certain extent. Do you have your own merchandise? Have you got a Facebook or a social media presence?
Yeah, we have all the basic mandatory ones: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and we have a small batch of merchandise as well. From studying music production, I know that you have to be like ready. You have to be already a complete package for all these aforementioned people to get interested.
That's the most ironic part of it. It's like you have to get to the point where you don't need them for them to be interested. It's kind of shitty in that sense. Are you in contact with any of the booking agents? I know Yoni is in. He does Tuska and he does all that stuff, and he's got a small production team of people that makes the videos for him and all that. I mean, when I was first starting, I actually, more so than trying to convince artists that they should take me on tour or something, which I did try. I remember going to booking or not going to booking agents, but going straight to the artists, like when they were coming off the stage and being, here's my demo, we're ready to go on tour, you should take me on tour. And 100% of the artists are going to be like, okay, cool, man. And then just kind of go back on the bus and forget about the interaction, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the things that helped me when I was first starting is I went to a production company in Vancouver, and they weren't a massive production company, but when international bands came to town, they played at this club. It was Starfish Room, I think it was called. And there was a bunch of local guys that bought the talent for that. So how it tends to work is international bands with their agents, essentially their agent sells that package. They're like, okay, Carcass is coming to town with Sacrifice opening up or whatever it was back in the day. And they would sell it to these local guys around me. And then they would buy the show for however much the package was looking for. And they put them on at the Starfish Room. And that company hired local bands to open these shows. So, they were kind of like lower mid-level touring acts, but it was because I approached these local guys that I started getting on those shows, right? So again, it appears great because it would be like Carcass and Sacrifice and then my band. But those two bands never knew about us. Like, good chance they were not even at the venue yet when we played. However, I could use those flyers that I had to be able to sort of step up to the next level. And so when a bigger band came to town, I'd be able to go up to the booking agents myself and say, look, we opened up for Carcass or we opened up for whatever. And then they put you on another one. And that's ultimately how I started getting attention locally. Like the magazines that reviewed shows locally, they were able to, we were on these shows and they sometimes reviewed us. And then it was, forget it, who else we ended up playing with, like Michael Schenker and just these bands came to town, right? So, I would suggest that in a practical way, if you were to approach a local talent buyer, and I bring up Yoni because I don't know if you know him, it's Gray Beard Productions, who does, like I say, Tuska, and he does a bunch of things, but he's also got a management company. So if you're in Finland, yeah, please. Graybeard, it's called. And his name is Yoni, Jouni. And Graybeard, he puts on Tuska every year in Helsinki, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yes.
And he also has a management company. So he manages a number of bands. I forget the name of them, but they're not signed. And if they are signed, they're signed to his label. And he's got a group of people around him that are younger that end up, either doing the talent buying for local bands or what have you. So I would suggest approaching him. He's the one contact I know of in Finland. And the other suggestion that I would have is if they don't respond, don't take it personally. And I know that's hard. I mean, it's easy, I think, when you're trying to establish yourself as an artist to put all your eggs in that basket. Like, well, he's my contact. This is the one that I'm going to do, blah, 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 blah. But you can also really turn people off really quick by being too overzealous. So,
I mean, it's something that doesn't really come naturally to me because I'm like a stereotypical Finn. I have problems selling myself, but I'm working on that. But just one thought to interject, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
One challenge has been because Finland is, everyone knows, like a metal country and stuff, but there's a kind of drawback to that because we make niche music, progressive metal, which I know you signed up for it, you gotta, take it. It's kind of tough because there isn't really that much of a local market for that. So it feels like I should be reaching out to people outside of Finland or something like that.
Well, I mean, there was a quote I heard recently that really I thought was inspiring, and that was, "You need to aim lower." And it seems like on the surface, that seems like a lack of ambition. But I think people get depressed and defeated because they think, well, we have to, if we're progressive, I'll say it's not even progressive metal, let's take something even more separate from that genre. Maybe you do stuff that sounds like Radiohead, and the only contact you've got is a guy who does metal. And you think, well, I don't want to approach him because we don't do metal and we don't want to get pigeonholed into this or whatever. But I think that's a good example of, it's still a contact, and it's almost irrelevant what style of music it is, as long as you're sort of making progress. And the practical example of that is Che, who works with me in this Casualties of Cool project. I mean, she's much younger than me. She has zero interest in metal, never was interested in metal at all. But we did the Casualties of Cool project, which is not metal, and it turned out well. And so she ended up being with me we played in Helsinki. We did a bunch of things with that Casualties of Cool project. But through the exposure that she had for that, we did like the Dunlop sessions. We did a couple of things that sort of got people to see what it is that she is. And so from there, now she's got a gig. She ended up working with Daniel Lanois, and she's doing a project with Bob Rock. And even though it's like he's been a rock dude, the project that he's doing is not that. And through that project, she ended up doing this vocal thing with Gord Downey, who he was a deceased singer for this tragically hip band, but they were doing a retrospective. And my point is, through me and my prog metal world, she was able to make contacts with people in the community that she was looking for. And I think that is a practical example of how someone that does music like yourself could progress. Just approach somebody, even if it doesn't seem like it's the right scene. I know Scandinavia in general has a lot of heavy music and a lot of heavy music management, but you'd be surprised at what casual relationships with these people can bring, because it's a small industry, and you may be a heavy metal manager, but you'd be surprised at how many times people that you wouldn't expect rub elbows with people in different genres. So I would start there, even though it is it seems like it's maybe not your scene. I would just start wherever I could and start making connections.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. And honestly, it's before you make those connections, it's really good to be prepared. And, I find for myself, I now have connections with people in really big bands, like bands that I would never expect. Yet my relationship with them has nothing to do with music so far. I'm on text chats with these, like 3 of these really famous dudes, just because they think I'm funny, or they like my personality, or what have you. But my music never comes into it. But that's an example as well of, you never know who these people are going to have relationships with. So a contact is a contact, I think.
Yeah, I saw the how some news sites latched onto the whole Chad Kroger thing and everything.
Yeah, and that's just one example of it. I mean, I wasn't even speaking of Chad in this example. It's just weird how after a while my connections with people, even take Chad for example, my relationship with him has got very little to do with music. It's, he's just sort of become a friend. And it's the same thing with these other people that I know. It's music is very, very often not a part of these relationships. And that's a really important skill, I think, to have. Like you say, I don't know how to sell myself. Well, neither do I. And I think that's why sometimes these people want to be with me on a social environment, just because I'm not trying to sell myself to them. It's much less about, using every interaction that I have to sort of further my career, and more if I'm being honest with it. If I'm being honest with the fact that I don't give a fuck about selling myself to people, that has actually gone a lot further for me than if I pretend I'm the type of personality that, can sell myself. It's not my personality. So the honesty, I think, plays for something. And I would go that route with yourself as well. Just don't try and sell yourself, man. Just do the hard work and try to be a decent guy to hang out with.
I'll try my best.
Man, I gotta say, the amount of people. This is something I wish I had known when I was younger. I will hire somebody who's fun to hang out with, who's half the musician, rather than hire somebody who's an amazing musician who can't hang. It's like if you make yourself indispensable by just helping people, those are the people who are going to get the call, and consequently, those are the bands that are going to get the call. I've met when I was, by being a good dude, man. And those are the practical things that really come down to it. I often say, if my career ends tomorrow, the value that I place on the work that I've done is going to be in how many people are going to help me move my shit out of my house, more so than how many awards that I have. And I met a guy last night. There's a guy that was recording up at a studio by my house last night who I've known for a few years, and he's famous. And his band wanted me to come meet with him last night. And I met with him, and he's a bit of a rock star. And he had, there's this sort of affliction that comes with the rock star thing where you get the impression from these people that your time is not worth theirs. And I know this guy likes me, and I know that he's a friend, and I know that he's talented, and I know he respects me. But it's almost like he learned that technique of how rock stars act. And my first reaction is just to tear into him, to be honest, because I think ultimately, no matter what walk of life that you're in, I mean, if you're pretending that you're something that you're not, people are going to see through it. And again, it's like you go back to your example of Chad there. The reason we get along is because he doesn't do that, to me at least. It's like he's a straight up guy. And I think that will go super far for anybody, specifically when you start, man. Because the guy at the production company is going to give the gig to the local band that they like hanging with the most. And I find that the ones they like hanging with are the ones that are not trying to hang. It's like, again, it's
the same thing.
You have people go.
Yeah, it's the same thing of people get interested when you don't need them.
Exactly. And it's not the aloof thing. It's more just, if sometimes they still slip through the cracks with me. There's people that want something from me, and so they're really nice to me. And sometimes I get duped by that still. And then when I realize that, I'm like, well, they're not actually being nice to me because they're nice. They're being nice to me because they want something. And I think the surest sign that they're actually nice is because when they're as nice to somebody that can't do anything for them, right? That's the type of people that I think are going to have a career in independent music. There's the people that are as kind to a person on the street as they are to somebody who they deem as having power to help them. And
it's kind of like that whole thing of like on your first date, you shouldn't go on the second date if the dude is rude to the waiter.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Exactly. And I think that, I firmly believe it. And again, this is coming from the point of view of somebody who has had a significant amount of luck, admittedly. But I think if you can work on that part of your personality and continue to make music, eventually that'll shine through. Eventually you'll be in some odd social situation where the guy who maybe is in a band that's more powerful than you just does some shitty thing. And I think if you're the guy that doesn't do that, I know for myself, those are the people that I hire. I would hire people who who prove that they're normal, rational human beings who are maybe not as good versus some douchebag that can play 30-second notes perfectly and just you want to spend no time with them, right? So I think that's from the ground up, man. Yeah, from the ground up, I think that's something that that people pay attention to, even if it's subconscious.
All right.
That's my advice, man. Don't be a douche and then make your own merch.
All right. So to finish off, since we seem to have a couple more minutes, if you'd just like to share anything about what's happening with Empath.
Empath is a very complicated record for me because I'm approaching it, again, I leave to start the drums tomorrow, and I'm approaching it with trepidation, which the more I think about it, the more it makes sense because there's a lot riding on this one, and I'm spending so much money on it, man. It's like my midlife crisis album or something. But I think one thing that I am very happy about is that even the course that we just went through, the Creative Academy, I took my own advice on it, on a lot of the things. So I didn't second guess the music. It's a lot of music. And it's very much, even if it's not maybe what I think the audience would necessarily expect from me right now, it's exactly where I'm at. And it's a very confusing time for me. It's like middle life, and there's family problems. My dad's having problems, and my kid's turning into a teen, and my wife's going into menopause, and there's like lots of financial things and psychological things and blah, blah, blah. So basically, by taking my own advice, what I ended up doing is saying, as opposed to making another DTP record, which is, I think, what people would expect and probably what makes sense from a business point of view, I decided to go as far into my process right now as I can and make an accurate representation of it. And as a result of that, the music is all over the fucking place. It's like 1 second it's death metal, and then it goes to this meditation thing, and then it goes to prog, and then it goes to a completely different key, and then an orchestra. And from a practical point, from a musical point of view, it's might make people just be like, what the fuck is this guy doing? But from an honesty point of view, it's probably the most honest thing that I've done in maybe ever. And so I'm working with the orchestra last week, and we've got this groove going in this song, and it's like super cool. And all of a sudden it just stops, and then it goes to this crazy beach scene with like steel drums and birds, and and the orchestra guy's going, why did you do that? And I said, honestly, because I got bored when I was writing. So I was writing it. It was a cool song, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm bored now. Okay, so I'll do this instead. And so the music sounds like that. And I think in terms of what it's going to mean to people, if I get it right, it's going to be a phenomenal experience. And I'll get it right. But I think the first listen for some audience members who are expecting more simple music, it's going to be like, dude, that key change, why the fuck did you even do that? There are a couple songs that are pretty straight ahead, but that's only because that appeared. It wasn't a conscious decision to add something more palatable. So it's costing a fortune. It's a ton of music, and it's very odd. So my hope is that by having faith in the process, like I've encouraged, you and everybody else to do, that we'll still be able to pay our bills.
All right. Well, thank you for doing the DTCA.
Thank you for paying attention to it, man. It means a lot to me, and we've put a lot of effort into it. So good luck with your music. And I feel that even from this interaction that we've had here and hearing some of your work, man, I think you're on a good path. You just got to keep walking, man.
I will. Thank you.
Cheers, brother.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Devin Townsend, what did you think? Let me know. I would love to hear from you. Rodney@musicbusinessfacts.com, or you can hit me up at facebook.com/musicbusinessfacts. And if you'd like the opportunity to be trained by Devin, then why don't you go and check out his course? Like I said, I've been putting it together with him, and I'm obviously a little bit biased, but it really is fantastic. It's got some amazing student testimonials, which are all real and true. Head over to dtcreativeacademy.com, and you can check out what it's all about. You can learn about Dev's, like I said before at the intro, his songwriting techniques, his singing techniques. He gives some awesome vocal lectures in there, guitar playing lessons, bass lessons, music production, all about his touring creative process. I mean, I don't know exactly how much stuff in there, but there's like 30 or 40 hours at least. So it's a very, very great product. And if you are a Devin fan, I also interviewed Devin way back in episode 43 on this show. So if you'd like to hear another interview I did with Devin way back in on musicbusinessfacts.com, check out episode 43 and you can hear me talking to Dev there as well. Anyhow, wherever you are in the world and whatever you're up to, I hope life is treating you well. And until next time, this is Rodney Holder signing off for musicbusinessfacts.com. Take care.
You've been listening to the Music Business Facts podcast. For more essential music business tips and information, visit musicbusinessfacts.com.